All right, so good evening. My name is Zach Carnegie. I'm the Maryland Forest Projects Coordinator with the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. We're a nonprofit that's headquartered in Annapolis, Maryland. We work with citizens, corporations, local government, and conservationists to improve land use practices within Chesapeake Bay watershed to improve our water quality. We currently have a grant working with the town of La Plata, as well as Davey Resource Group Incorporated, to do we hired Davey Resource Group to do an urban tree canopy assessment, and they're going to be working with the town to update an urban tree canopy plan. We have several other goals in this project, all of which has been funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Some of the goals in this grant also include planting 75 new trees within the town of La Plata. So those would be urban tree plantings, as well as 15 acres of afforestation, so planting 15 acres of new forest within Charles County as a whole. So I'll turn it over to our representative from Davey Resource Group to go over some of the data they've collected so far in this project.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sandra Elbro with Davey Resource Group. I'm based in Cleveland, so it's really nice to be in La Plata today to talk to you about the trees here. So we'll go through this presentation that will show you information from a 2022 street tree inventory that we did for the town and the early findings from an urban tree canopy assessment that will be published later this year. Yeah, it's not advancing. Okay, thank you. So what is the urban forest? That is all of the trees that exist in the town, both public and private. So in the public areas, we have public trees in the streets, in parks and natural areas, and other city-owned properties. And then in the private sphere, we have trees in residential areas, commercial, industrial, and also institutions such as colleges and hospitals. When we think of trees in urban areas, one of the largest reasons we care about the trees so much is because of the many benefits that they provide to people and the environment in towns and cities. So trees help clean our air by filtering particulate matter. They help reduce runoff by absorbing stormwater. They cool our temperatures by evapotranspiration and directly cooling the air. And they also are linked to health benefits in people, particularly stress reduction, which translates into less coronary artery disease. And some of the cleaner air also impacts asthma. So you see better health outcomes in areas that have more trees as well. And so when we are talking about the urban forest and where there are trees and where there aren't trees, we're indirectly talking about the benefits of trees and the fact that there's inequality in who benefits from them. So some people in more tree canopied areas are just getting more benefits from trees. They're paying less in energy. They're getting these health benefits. And some people that live in areas without a lot of trees are not receiving those same benefits. So with the urban tree canopy assessment that we're currently undertaking, that will serve as a guiding document for the town of La Plata to better understand the urban forest and the benefits that the trees in La Plata provide to residents. And then it'll also help us identify opportunities to plant trees and to grow the urban forest to equalize some of the benefits that are provided and to increase them over time. We kicked off this project in early 2022 in January. In February, we inventoried the street trees in La Plata, and in April, we began the urban tree canopy assessment. Currently, we're in a period of public input where we'll incorporate your feedback into the documents that will be published later this year. And we're hoping to finalize the urban tree canopy assessment and plan by the end of the year. So currently, what we discovered in February is that we collected data on 712 publicly owned trees in the town of La Plata. There were an additional 7 stumps, which is Not very many stumps. That reflects an ongoing effort by the town to remove trees and get those stumps out of the ground. We also identified 1,157 planting sites that are currently vacant, that maybe had trees, that maybe could have trees if it were determined that the soils and everything were appropriate for trees. So that's 1,100 opportunities to possibly add more trees to the town. And for each of these trees, you can see in the map, the trees are highlighted in green. The planting sites that are vacant are highlighted as yellow triangles, and then the stumps are red squares. We collected information at each of the trees about their location, their condition, the species identification, and then some maintenance needs that they might have. So of 1,876 sites that we inventoried, you can see in the graph on the left just that same information, 700 street trees, 1,100 planting sites, and 7 stumps. And on the right is the condition of the trees that we inventoried. So of those 712 trees, 444 were in good condition, 234 were in fair condition, which is about average for trees. Sometimes people interpret fair to be bad. It's average in this rating scale. And only 30 and 4 trees were evaluated to be poor condition or dead. So overall, the median condition for the trees that we inventoried was good, which is great. Sometimes in towns and cities, you see a median condition of fair. So in general, the trees that we have here in La Plata are in good condition. For diversity, like I mentioned, we characterized the species of each of the trees that we inventoried. And on the left is a table showing the top 10 species in La Plata. And just a quick little red star indicating whether they are native to the area or not. And then on the right is a graph showing the abundance of each of those trees and what percent of the overall population they make up. So we see that red maple comprises about 20% or 1/5 of the 712 trees that we inventoried. Now, a rule of thumb is that you don't want any one species of tree to exceed about 10% of the population, and that protects the urban forest from pests and diseases that might prey on a particular tree species. So like what we saw with the emerald ash borer, which focuses on ash trees, is that in subdivisions in La Plata that had a lot of ash trees, those were eventually deforested after emerald ash borer came through. So what we see here is some potential vulnerability. Say if you had a pest that came in and liked red maple a lot, that's 1/5 of your trees. So over time, there's an opportunity to diversify the tree species to help reduce the abundance of any one particular species to below 10%. So that doesn't mean that we have to remove red maples. It just means that we would prioritize other species of trees when we do new plantings until that red maple starts to come closer to 10% of the population. And amongst the top 5 species that we have in La Plata, all of those top 5 exceed that 10% rule. So there's a really great opportunity to diversify the tree species here. When we look at the size of the trees, this graph here shows both large growing trees, which are 35 feet tall at maturity or taller, and small growing trees, which are 35 feet or shorter. So crepe myrtle would be a small growing tree, and a willow oak would be a large growing tree. And then we further divided them into their age, kind of estimated from how big big diameter they are. So of the young trees, there are a large number of large growing trees in there. And then when you go all the way to the right to the mature trees, there are, first of all, very few mature trees, which are larger than 35 inches, or I'm sorry, 24 inches DBH for a large growing tree. So what we see is that the overall urban forest in La Plata skews to the young side, and we don't have as many established and mature trees here. On the positive side, it does show that there's been a recent effort to really plant a lot of young trees, especially those large growing trees like oaks. So that's also a good sign. And over time, as those young trees grow into established and maturing sizes, you'll start to see this graph equalize a little bit. The red line here indicates about an ideal distribution of what the ages should look like. So we have 70% of the large growing trees here are young. Over time, we would want to see that reduced to about 40% of all of the large growing trees. So the inventory is a way to look at individual trees and what their condition is. And then in contrast, an urban tree canopy assessment is a bird's eye view. So from an airplane, what does the urban forest look like in La Plata? Where are there trees? Where aren't there trees? And what indicators do we have about where we might add new trees and why? So on the left, we see that La Plata is on average shade about 54% of the land area is shaded by trees, which is a pretty good percentage. Where I'm from in Cleveland, only 18% of the city is shaded by trees. But for both Cleveland and La Plata, historically, that tree cover used to be 100% before development. So, it's a big change from what it used to be. Over the past 10 years, there has been some growth of about 4% tree cover since 2011. Now, I've heard that there were some ice storms here in the last 10 years that would have removed a lot of trees. There were also areas of a lot of growth of tree cover. So in the map on the right, we see areas in dark green. The tree cover there grew by more than 50% in the last 10 years. In the yellow areas, tree cover increased from 0 to 25%. So there's some areas of real growth there, 0 to 25%. And then in pink and red are areas that lost tree cover. So in the dark red, those saw more than 10% of the land area lost trees. So you may see some evidence of development there and other activities. Emerald ash borer would have also reduced tree cover. And then this map shows areas that we might prioritize in the town for future tree planting. So what we did is we took maps of a lot of different environmental and social indicators. For the environmental side, we looked at stormwater. On the social side, we looked at a lot of social indicators that might indicate that populations of people might be vulnerable to either the benefits of trees or to the loss of trees through removal. So things like income, health, anything that's linked to health disparities, because we know that trees provide a lot of health benefits. So if you in neighborhoods with a lot of existing health disparities, they're going to be particularly sensitive to the loss or gain of additional trees. So putting all of that information together into this composite map, we can see areas of the town that we might prioritize for planting to help improve the environment and also the social outcomes of people who live in the town. So in areas in pink and dark red, those are areas very high priority for social and environmental reasons. In yellow, those are areas with moderate priority. So you see the downtown area, there are a lot of economic benefits to trees and a lot of people go there. So, that's moderate priority area. And then areas with high existing tree cover and maybe not a lot of people already might be show up on this map as very low. Actually, go back to that really quickly. Just one last thing to say about this map is we've been discussing this map within the town, and I'll just mention that even though an area is very high priority for planting, that doesn't necessarily mean that planting is going to be easy there. It might be very difficult for various reasons to plant in high priority areas. Sometimes it's not possible for the town to plant in those areas because the right of way or the strip that is owned by the town might not be appropriate for trees, and that might be an opportunity for engaging private residents to help increase tree cover by talking to them about the benefits of trees and why it's important. So going back to those benefits that trees provide, we now have numbers based on the 712 trees in the town of La Plata and what those specific trees provide to the residents of the town. So we know that those trees remove 90 tons of pollutants and particulate matter each year. They help sequester 1.7 tons of carbon each year. So that means they're taking carbon out of the atmosphere where it contributes to global warming, storing it in their woody tissue, and that keeps it out of the atmosphere. And then for stormwater, those trees help absorb 60 million gallons of rainwater each year and keep that out of your sewers and septic systems. Okay, so of everything that I've presented to you tonight, the results of both the inventory and the urban tree canopy assessment, we now know more about the publicly owned trees after the inventory of 712 street trees here. We've identified an opportunity to diversify and grow the urban forest. So diversifying by planting trees that are not the top 5 species that we already have. Also an opportunity to plant native trees because not all of those trees in the top 10 are native. We have seen that there are a lot of vacant planting spaces that are worthy of further examination to see if they could support new trees. And then for the trees that we currently have, pruning and maintenance will allow those trees to continue to grow. And that will also, actually, one of the easiest ways to grow your tree cover is not through tree planting, but protecting the trees that you already have so that they get bigger. More than half of the town is shaded by trees, which is great. Also, we've seen modest growth in tree cover in the last 10 years. However, we also know that there are a couple of large development projects coming in, and those will, you may see reductions in tree cover in the near future as a result of that development. So that's why protecting public trees is increasingly important, and it's important to think about ways to offset development and really balance like development with urban forestry growth, which is possible to do. Because not every vacant planting site within the public right of way or within publicly owned areas is appropriate for tree planting for various reasons. It's also really important to engage with private residents and businesses and institutions about planting and stewarding trees on the property that they have. So ways that all of these groups can get involved is to help plant and steward preferably native trees on private property, and that will help support efforts that are also going on in the public spaces around growing La Plata's urban forest. We have a survey where you can provide feedback. If you follow the QR code on the right, that will take you to a quick survey. It should take less than 10 minutes where you can tell us about what you think about La Plata's trees. And then the next steps for this project, kind of going back to that timeline that I showed you earlier, we are in a period of public comment now. So we've held a couple of meetings to engage stakeholders and residents today on July 27th. And then we also have the survey open for public engagement. Later this summer, we'll wrap up the research and analysis and then have draft plan recommendations to the project team, hopefully by late summer. And then by late fall, early winter, we'll have a completed urban forest master plan ready for comment by city council and ready for release to the public. Okay, if you have any questions, these are the team members who have been working in the town on the urban tree canopy assessment. For general questions, you can email Kelly Phipps. For questions relating to codes and ordinances, you can email Janine Harrington or Laura Lyon. Okay, Laura Lyon. And then for the Alliance for the Bay, around engagement opportunities, and particularly the Maryland tree stewards, if you're interested in getting active in stewarding trees, you can email Zach Carnegie.